to the creator argument. So it's a kind of, well, we believe everything exists. How's everything here? And evolution is a kind of response to that as like a possibility. But I don't see how it becomes definitive.
Okay, so firstly, like you said, how is it definitive, right? Anything in science is bound to change, is bound to be in flux. Of course, observations don't change. We know, for example, the relationship between HIV and AIDS, and these are direct observations or these types of things. But when it comes to, say, a theoretical historical event, which is based upon inferences and some assumptions, then of course those things can actually change. Now, when it comes to what's his argument is essentially, we have an explanation for how life evolved. Therefore, we don't need a creator. However, the problem is, even if, and this is what philosophers or the likes of some biologists who are philosophically experienced would say, well, this is a category mistake between how and why, right? So if I say to you, you see this live stream that we're on, SteamYard, and Hamza's Den, the logo, and all of this, I explain mechanistically how everything works. I explain the connection between satellites, Wi-Fi, how the live stream is working. After all of this, I then say there is no intelligence between this behind this live stream, right? That I've explained how it works. I know how laptops work. I know how phones work. I've explained all the mechanics, and therefore there's no God. Therefore, no one made it. So essentially, he's confusing how and why. It's a category mistake, right? Now, that category mistake, it's compounded by another fallacy that he makes, which is the fallacy between, and this gets a little bit technical, but I'm just going to simplify it, between two different types of naturalism, okay? Now, if I'm here and I'm starting to have a heart attack, like I'm going to die, right? And then Hamza says, right, quickly, Dr. Imran, come over and help Sabur, right? Now, you are assuming that when we've been talking to Dr. Imran all this time, he's a medical doctor, right? What if he turns up and he tries to give me a logical symposium of some sort? I'm a doctor of philosophy, actually. Well, we're going to say, well, that's just fallacious. We asked for a medical doctor. We didn't ask for a philosophical doctor, right? Or somebody who has a doctorate in chemistry or whatever. So when we are talking about naturalism, there's two distinct types. There's methodological naturalism and philosophical naturalism, okay? Now, you may not know the full in-depth view, but what you need to know is, just like there's two different meanings of the word doctor, there's two different meanings of naturalism. Philosophical naturalism, methodological naturalism. Methodological naturalism is what science is based upon. Science is based upon the idea, and this is more so due in the late Victorian period, that anything that we study, it has to have a physical effect and causation, and we can't refer to the immaterial mind or God or anything like that, okay? That's not the same thing, that assumption is not the same thing as the belief that there's no God. One's an assumption, a working assumption in science. One is a belief that there is no God, which is philosophical naturalism. He confuses the two, which is why eminent atheist philosophers like Massimo Pigliucci, who's a very famous philosopher, because he's a philosopher who has a background, he has a PhD in biology, and he has a PhD in philosophy. And he's an atheist, right? But he says Dawkins' argument is based on a fallacy of equivocating two different meanings and meaning them to mean one particular meaning. So his entire argument, his entire book, you can summarize as the fallacy of equivocation. Yeah, he's confusing two different types. Now we can get into the details of this, but I want you to give that general overview to show there's a massive difference between the popular narrative and what the academics are saying, which is why Richard Dawkins, why can't he get his book published as a philosophical paper? You'll not find a single philosophical journal which is willing to take the central argument of the God delusion and publish it and get it peer reviewed. It'll get slaughtered, which is why some philosophers have said Richard Dawkins will not pass an introductory philosophy of science and religion class. He will not pass the introduction because his very works are based on these types of fallacies.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, your segment, Doctor, we'll talk about suffering, because this is another thing that this is the Stephen Fry. I always call it the Stephen Fry argument, because he's the one who says, like, when he sees God, he's going to say, "How very dare you? How very dare you?" And then he's going to talk about kids get cancer and poor and poverty and famine and war and all of this kind of stuff. And so the claim that the atheists, I don't even know how they make this claim too much, because to me, it's just refuted straight away. It's, you know, because bad things happen, maybe you could philosophize that God wants bad things to happen. So just because bad things happen doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. It just means God allows it to exist. And then you can, to happen. And then you can ask the question, why does God allow it to happen? But anyway, let's take it from its nuts and bolts. And you're going to struggle to do this, I think, without Islam. That's the only problem. Because
I'll try and do it without.
I was just saying that because James SC is banging on about Islam in the comments, right? And we ain't talking about Islam.
We're happy to invite anyone on afterwards when we put the link out to discuss. But I wanted to touch on Brother Sabur's what he mentioned. It's something very profound, and that's a lot of this was profound actually. But there's something that stuck out to me was this idea that atheism is somehow linked with science, and there isn't actually a link there. The leap of faith that is required to jump between science and atheism is a huge chasm, and it can't be jumped. You can be a world record long jumper and you're not going to make that jump because it's not possible to do that, which is why sometimes you think that when scientists publish popular writings that aren't philosophical, like in journals, for example, philosophically recognized, they're almost writing out of their lane. They're sort of going out of their lane and delving into things and almost hoping that because the average person on the street doesn't know the differences between these technical things, that they can get away with this idea. And Brother Sabur uses a term, and he used it in Speaker's Corner a few times, and I hope he'll elaborate. I'm sure it will come up later. The most atheists that we meet, and most of them atheists in the chats, are, and even some of the scientists who are working at high levels are what we would call socialized atheists. They've been brought up into this concept because they follow something underlying, which is called scientism, and this is almost a religion in itself. And I'm sure the Brother Sabur can expand on this. So that's very profound. So there is no intrinsic link between following or adhering to science and being an atheist. So this is actually a fallacious position, that because a lot of atheists will come to us with this perspective that I'm a science-based person, evidence-based person. First thing they say, and there's actually no link there.
And I think that even at that point, you have to science v Islam, and you're like, what are you talking about?
Completely. But I'm going to try and have a slightly different approach to this problem of evil and suffering. Okay. And I'm going to start with the very, very basic thing: the label itself. How are we labeling things evil? And I want you to keep in mind the atheistic concept of the universe and a theistic concept of the universe, because we're going to try and apply that label in both of these universes to see how that would happen. So let me start with and if your interaction here would be great, guys. So let's have an experiment. This is a thought experiment, okay? I'm going to start with a person with a chainsaw attacks a child and chops them in half. Is this evil?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. A person is on a step ladder with a chainsaw, falls off the step ladder, and chops a child in half. Is this evil?
Yeah.
It's evil.
Say again.
A person on a step ladder falls. So this is an accident. He falls with the chainsaw. Sorry, I didn't say accident before, but I'm clarifying. He falls with a chainsaw, and the chainsaw cuts the child in half.
Oh, it's an accident. Okay, yeah. You say it's an accident. You wouldn't say there's no intention.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say no.
Great. So that you mentioned the word intention there. Now let's take it another step. A robot, following its programming, takes a chainsaw and chops a child in half. Is that robot intrinsically evil?
No.
Okay. So all of the actions are the same. The outcome is the same. We have a dead child in all three scenarios. One of them we would say is evil, and the other two we say are not evil. And what was the difference? Brother Sabur mentioned it.
Intention.
Intention. And intention implies a mind behind the action. That's quite clear, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if there is no mind behind the action, then that thing itself cannot be labeled with the term evil, because that's really just a judgment for the outcome. And so we go back to what was the mind behind the outcome before we decide if this is evil or not. So now take that example and apply it to the universe, that, say, for an example, that atheists believe in, that there is no creator. Can we apply to anything that happens within this universe where there is no creator? Everything is mechanistic, like the robot is mechanistic. Can we apply the label to evil to any action that happens? Earthquakes, floods, cancers. We can't. Why can't we apply that label in that atheistic universe?
It's devoid of volition.
Devoid of volition, devoid of mind, devoid of intention.
Yeah.
So when the atheist even raises the point that why is there evil and suffering in the world, this is an admission at a fundamental level that he believes there is intention, volition, and mind to explain the universe, or behind the universe. It's an implicit within the question itself. So you can't even ask the question about evil in the world unless you make this assumption. If you say that, if you believe that there is no God, then everything then no longer is evil. It's just an action, like a ball rolling down a hill, like a robot carrying out mechanistic things, like a guy falling off a ladder. And these are mechanisms, mechanistic things. They don't carry any moral weight, moral value. So almost immediately what we've done here is we've taken this word evil away from the atheistic worldview. So if you want to apply it, you have to assume God to start with. So now let's apply it to, so now the explanation that let's go into the theistic universe. We believe that there is an intention, a volition, a mind behind the universe. And so what that means really is that we need to explain why this suffering might be here, why these evil things that might be happening, why are they there? So that's another tangent now we have to go on. So in an atheistic universe, you can't even make the moral judgment because there's nothing to anchor that with. In a theistic universe now, we have to anchor this somehow and explain why this might be there. So let's go to another thought experiment. So initially what we've done is to claim evil exists is to acknowledge the universe is intended and there is a mind of volition behind it. A theistic universe, the way that the problem of evil is often put is, look, God is all good, doesn't really want evil around. God is all powerful, so should have the ability to get rid of evil and must want to stop evil. So why is there evil? Either he doesn't want to get rid of it and he's not good, or he can't get rid of it and he's not all powerful. And because evil exists, therefore God must not exist, because those are two things that the qualities that God should have, two attributes that God should have. But let's do a thought experiment around this. This argument itself has a major flaw in it, and I'm sure that lots of people already know the flaw within the argument. And what it does, the first flaw is actually this: what we're doing is we're taking almost a truncated view of what people understand God to be. So God is not just those things, all good and all powerful, but he's all wise and he's all just, and there are lots of attributes